Welcome to the next episode of Billionaire Takedown with your hosts, Victor, Mark, and Tim. Take it away, Mark.
Hello, audience. Today, on the third episode of Billionaire Takedown, we are absolutely delighted to welcome our very first guest to the show. Mark Mori has a long resume as a director, producer, and executive producer of documentary films. He's won an Emmy and been nominated for Best Feature Documentary at the 1990 Academy Awards. Mark's most recent documentary is what we're here to discuss. It is called The Baristas versus the Billionaires, which has already won the 2026 Labor Oscars.
Welcome to the show, Mark.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Of course, I know you, Mark and Tim, from recently when the film screened in New York City. So I'm looking forward to our chat about it.
Tim, were you going to play the clip where the Labor Oscars were won?
Yes, I will do that. Let's make sure volume is up.
Baristas versus billionaires.
Yes, I have billions of dollars.
Shut it down!
I earned it. No one gave it to me.
Shut it down!
We are tired of listening to billionaire CEOs take sole credit for the billions of dollars of profit made off our labor.
Power to the people. Mark, to the extent you can you tell us what, if any, similarities there are between Howard Schultz's union busting and Jeff Bezos's union busting?
Oh, I think there's very little difference between it's all about union busting. I mean, they have different tactics, different situations, but both of them hire union busting law firms. In fact, it's my understanding that somewhere around a year ago, Starbucks had spent $250 million trying to bust the union, which is a lot of money. But they've been unsuccessful. I went and talked to the guys organizing the Amazon union at Staten Island.
Smalls.
At the very beginning. Chris Smalls, became friends with Chris Smalls. They were having a film made about them. So I moved on to make the film about Starbucks, which was a fortunate thing, it turns out, I think, because the Starbucks union drive is just, as one guy said in the film, these baristas are going to go down in labor history.
That's right.
Yeah, I think they will.
Do you know if there are any other billionaires as actively involved in union busting as Bezos and Schultz?
Well, Elon Musk is busting union attempts at Tesla factories. Apple is doing it. I mean, they're all doing it. REI, Trader Joe's. These are all service jobs that are not unionized, but they can't export the jobs because they're service jobs. I mean, you need to have a Trader Joe's store here to have the business. So they're all taking the same approach and trying to crush these unions.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more powerful than the people united, right? Whether they're workers or the working class. I mean, it seems to me that's our last resort, because it doesn't seem like we have a democracy anymore. It feels like we need to come together with people power and declare general strikes or refrain from paying taxes or refuse to pay mortgages to get the government to pay heed to the demands of the people and not the billionaires.
Well, yeah, right now the billionaires are running everything, and you're completely right about what you're saying. And what's so inspiring about this Starbucks story is these are young people in their 20s. I call it the revenge of the Rust Belt. They're the children and grandchildren of these factory workers, Bethlehem Steel and so forth, whose factories were shut down and shipped to China. and they've just had enough, and they're rising up. And this is a young people-led movement organized by them, and it's not from some union bureaucrats on top doing this. Of course, they don't generally do that sort of thing, but yeah, I think that's really inspirational what these young people are doing.
And they paid a heavy price for it.
Well, yes, they have, but that's always the case. I mean, this is I draw a lot of parallels between what's going on today and the labor struggles of the 1930s. The UAW wasn't successful. They were striking all throughout the 1930s and getting fired and getting opposed by the Henry Fords and the General Motors, until they sat down at the Flint sit-down strike in 1937 and actually took over the factory and stopped the production and had to fight off the National Guard. I mean, we're looking at a version of the same thing today.
Right.
That's what I was worried about too. I was worried about specifically the Trump administration sending in a National Guard to break up strikes and to force production at a lot of places. If we got to that point and we had a general strike, I was afraid of history repeating itself.
Well,
I was.
Go ahead.
No, continue.
Well, I think it's escalating, and it could come to that. But these working people have nothing to lose. I mean, they've been shown by these billionaires they don't care about them at all. They can die on the job for all they care. They're just a body, and so when they're fighting for everything. It's a life and death struggle for them.
In fact, there was recent news of someone in an Amazon factory dying on the factory floor, and they were telling workers to just get back to work, weren't they?
Yeah. It's not unlike you read about textile mills in the 1920s. All of this kind of stuff. It's all a rerun of that same thing.
Yeah.
People think that's ancient history, but the billionaires will do this every time they get a chance.
I don't think people even know that there is a history. I was never consciously educated in New York State public school system on the labor movement. I was never told anything about the National Guard being brought in to shut down workers and what the struggles were at the turn of the century, just getting children out of the factories. I don't think people appreciate the nature of capital to the point where it has no conscience. Because most people are good people, so they don't relate to psychopathy. But they need to understand that there are always these individuals who are drawn to the levers of capital and power and wealth accumulation who don't care about any consequences, whether it be the environment or human beings. And that without government intervention, there's no end to their willingness to exploit labor.
Well, to the extent that government intervenes, it's only because they're scared of the masses of people rising up. That's the only real power, is when masses of workers and people take things into their own hands. That's what caused things like the civil rights reform. All workers have sacrificed their lives for the last 150 years to get the 8-hour day, to end child work, to get health benefits, to get pensions. There was a point where workers, you get too old, you're just thrown out and to die. And it was all of these things that we kind of take for granted were fought for with blood by working people.
Yeah, it's not the government that intervened; it's people who forced the government to create laws. But that's what I mean is I don't think most Americans, 80+% of Americans today, realize that these institutions needed to be forced 100 years ago to comply with these rules. Otherwise, they would just pit worker against worker forever. Oh, you won't do the job for 4 cents an hour? Then they'll do it.
Right. Well, and
it's a form of slavery. It's slavery. It's indentured servitude. It always has been.
It's wage slavery.
You had a version of this during the Vietnam War, which is within my memory. Millions of people were in the street opposing the war in Vietnam. And some students got shot and died for it. And,
Kent State.
Yeah, I made a documentary about that. But you're right about labor history not being available in schools. Yeah, I studied it extensively, but I had to do it on my own. It's all there if you look for it, but it's not part of the mainstream curriculum or media or anything.
Mark, we kind of skipped over that warm getting to know you phase in the podcast. We jumped right into the meat of it. But can you tell us a little bit about what has drawn you to being this kind of documentary filmmaker over the years, one who fights for people's rights through his work?
But, yeah, I mean, I am old enough to be an anti-Vietnam War activist. That's what got me going. I even was so disgusted with the Vietnam War. And that's when I realized that working people was what makes change. I actually dropped out of an elite university and went to work in a steel mill for 5 years. Actually, before that, I went to work in a cotton mill in downtown Atlanta, Fulton Cotton Mill. Some of the machines said 1898, 1920 on them. And we had to work 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 8 hours on Saturday and Sunday, no days off, $1.80 an hour. And that's I got fired. 2 friends of mine and I got fired for trying to organize a union there. But then I went on to the steel mill, and I got elected to a position in the union, and the company fired me because I was very politically active, organizing steel workers against police brutality and these kind of things. And the company fired me, and the union got my job back. So it's that experience so I've been a political activist all of my life, and filmmaking became one version of that.
And what drew you specifically to the Starbucks question?
Well, around 2020 or 2021, I could see young laborers rising up. The first thing I read about was Chris Smalls and the Amazon Labor Union. And I went out several times and spoke with him and some of the people he was working with. They were already having a documentary made on them. So then I discovered Starbucks, and that was mushrooming all over the country. I mean, the Amazon Labor Union was in one particular huge Amazon warehouse of 5,000 people, but I saw these baristas getting organized all over the country, and I just went out and started interviewing baristas. I didn't know what the story was. So that led me to Buffalo, New York, which is where the whole thing started in a single store, now spread to something like 700 stores and 12,000 members. So that is a good story. And I followed it over about 4 years. So you don't see this in the mainstream media. The most you see is, a little local news thing. Starbucks went on strike today at our local store or whatever. But I put the whole thing together and paint the picture of this new rising young labor movement.
And an impressive picture it is.
Is it real? Is it real, Mark? I mean, I wouldn't know because I don't work in those industries. I don't work in a field where there's any sort of a union possible. I work in IT. But I'd be really curious because it seems to me from the Vietnam era, which I was not alive for, but I was alive and I did participate in the anti-war protests, against the Iraq War.
Right.
And there were at least millions of people protesting at that point. It seems like almost the entire left, the entire anti-war movement is gone. I'm not seeing it very much in the youth right now. But Victor is a youth. Maybe he could share a perspective.
Well, I share a very similar perspective to yours. There's not as many people as I would like protesting the Iran war in this country, in the United States. Around the world, it is unanimously known that this is completely immoral, what the U.S. is doing. There's just either awareness or I couldn't really tell you what it is exactly, but there needs to be more. There's not enough people outraged at the atrocities that are being committed.
Well, not to get off topic, but just with respect to fighting for a better future or the angst that your generation must be feeling. Mark Mori, do you have evidence in addition to Starbucks for other movements that are starting to burble up or, around labor and workers' rights and such?
Well, there are union drives at all these retail places, REI, Apple, Amazon, Trader Joe's. There's a long list of places where they're attempting to organize unions. I don't know that any of them have had the level of success as these Starbucks baristas. So that's really an inspirational story. But one thing I see in common with the Vietnam era is you're having big demonstrations in other countries against the Iran war. I think there was like in Paris and London and places, or pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And, the students that protested in this country were brutally suppressed. I mean, they were expelled from school, and some of them criminally charged. This happened in the 1960s with the anti-war movement. It's very similar. And I think a lot of people are fed up, and they're looking for something. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for organization. And I think things are falling into place. It's kind of right. It's very right for an explosion of a movement. And I think we're on the verge of it.
I did see in Italy, before the fake end of hostilities in Gaza, that the people were really growing very restless, and they have strong socialist organizations there, and they are able to commit to general strikes. Certainly the port workers have a lot of power in that society, and I saw strikes where there were millions of people in the streets, and the police, I think in Milan or somewhere up north, joined in with the peaceful protesters who were protesting against the genocide. And then after the fake ceasefire in Gaza, we haven't seen as much of that, right? Because it's also not in the rotation of the news, because we have Epstein files, we have the Iran war. It's still going on. The genocide is still happening. But it seems like every effort has been made in the United States to neutralize these efforts, because I think they're terrified of us actually figuring out we have this power against them. If we only knew, they'd be quivering in their pants.
Yeah, well, I think they are quivering in their pants, by the way.
Without doubt. Yeah, without 100%.
But this Starbucks thing is a movement. There are, I think, 24 student organizations that are active on campuses, college campuses, supporting the Starbucks workers. In a couple places, they've actually driven Starbucks off the campus. I think at Cornell and another place in Southern California. And then there's all kind of groups. There's, I think, a couple of hundred chapters of democratic socialists who are very active in supporting the Starbucks workers. So this stuff is bubbling right under the surface. It doesn't get into the mainstream media. But one of the things I'm trying to do with Baristas versus Billionaire is sort of be a focal point where people can come together and build their strength and get organized.
Talking about the students involved in the baristas, can you tell us a little bit about your interaction with the baristas in the early stages? How did you find their passion or the like?
Well, I think what I found really interesting is they were kind of discovering their own power. They were kind of, they were going these jobs and they're told what to do and they have no say so. And all of a sudden, a few of them get together and they vote in the union in their stop, and they start to feel strong like that. Oh, we do have some power if we do it right. And that awakening, and that's what's so powerful about the Starbucks baristas. That situation was so right, but that's why it spread like wildfire across the country. It just took one store in Buffalo to actually vote the union in, and then it just took off on its own. And I think you'll see that sort of thing repeated throughout society in the coming years.
Mark, after you saw the first unionization in Buffalo, I know it spread to other stores. The anti-union efforts got ramped up significantly after that by Starbucks. In your experience, what would you say is the biggest thing that the baristas were feeling in terms of like pressure or alienation from Starbucks and their anti-union push? Like, what was their reaction to that?
Well, a lot of them talked about things changed at Starbucks when COVID hit. There were more demands being put on them. They would not feel like the company was taking care of them in terms of their safety. They would try to have meetings with the company and say, we're all getting sick from COVID. We can't keep up. In the case of Buffalo, the first strike at a Starbucks store happened at that original store that unionized because half of the staff was out with COVID and they couldn't keep up. And the company refused to deal with it. And so they just went on strike. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
It speaks to the conditions that they were working under. No, definitely.
Right.
Absolutely. This didn't happen in a vacuum. It's not just like, there's a multitude of reasons behind this, systemic reasons. And
yeah, I mean, they were getting short-staffed. The pay was not, the benefits were not keeping up with the cost of the benefits, were not keeping up with their insurance was not right. The costs were going up and the benefits were going down. And Michelle Eisen, who's now a national spokesman for Starbucks Workers United, she had a broken ankle. She had worked at Starbucks for, I think, 11 years. She had to pay it completely out of her own pocket. Even though Starbucks advertises they have the best health insurance, they were the first ones with health insurance. I mean, that's all PR, you know. And so
But
now
at some point it was
Starbucks,
true, right?
what's that?
At some point it was true, right?
Well, it was more true, I think, before the pandemic. I mean, a lot of people, you know, they were going through college, they worked their way through college working at Starbucks, and they had an okay experience. It was decent pay. And I think they were treating the employees better because they understood that the employees treat the customers better, and they were promoting this whole customer experience. Well, I think just to squeeze more profit, it finally became completely Wall Street oriented, and it's just how much profit can we squeeze, and to hell with everything else, you know?
I think
That's
it's also,
interesting.
I think it's very convenient that they mentioned the healthcare policy, but like we just said, a lot of these people, a lot of these workers at Starbucks are trying to work their way through college. So they're disproportionately more likely to also be on their parents' insurance. Their university might offer some sort of health insurance. So the burden on the corporation was not as significant as they would like to present it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they kept shorting the hours. You have to work so many hours at Starbucks to qualify for the health insurance and the other benefits, and they would just keep people below the number of hours where they could qualify for benefits.
Right.
I mean, the average salary last year of a Starbucks barista was something like $14,600 for a whole year. I mean, that's poverty. Yeah.
Have they come after you yet, Mark? Have they tried to shut you down or prevent the film?
I wish they would. I wish they would. Because then I could use that against them, which I certainly would. I think they want to ignore it, pretend, hope it's going to go away. And if I hear from them, I'll know it's having an effect.
Do you have any indication that they know about it?
Oh, well, I requested interviews with Howard Schultz, interviews with any Starbucks executive. They said no to all that. So I know they're aware of it because of that.
Well, that's pretty extraordinary. Talking about the Starbucks executives, could you tell us a little bit about the, I don't know what you'd call them, the executive hit squad or the executive CIA from Starbucks?
Yeah, in the film, Starbucks themselves, when this union thing first came up in Buffalo, and it was legally, they had to have a vote on whether they were going to vote for the union in this one store at Elmwood in Buffalo. Starbucks sent, and then it started spreading to other stores in Buffalo, and I think there were 3 stores at the time that were trying to unionize. And so Starbucks executives sent in, hang on one second. Anyway, sent in more executives. They sent in more than 100 corporate executives from all over the country, including the president of Starbucks North America, the COO, chief operating officer. I mean, those are the top 2 positions in Starbucks in the US. And they sent them more than their number of baristas actually voting in the election. And they descended on Buffalo for 3 or 4 months. Starbucks called them the Buffalo SWAT team.
Yeah.
Which says exactly what it was there for, to swat down this union movement. And of course, the film tells the story of how this whole thing backfired on them when they did that.
So that's an additional massive expense to the $250 million in legal fees. I mean, it shows just how scared they are of unity amongst the people.
Right.
I've been a high-level strategic corporate consultant to both publicly traded and private firms, and what we regularly see is that the company can be more ethical and have more conscience when it's private, because the owners get to ultimately decide. But once there's a board of directors and it's publicly traded, they are legally obliged to always put profit before people. So
And that's Wall Street. That's Wall Street doing that.
Yeah, and that's Wall Street. So once you go public with your company, once you're on Wall Street, you say goodbye to any ability to affect real change because it's all short-term profit driven only.
And it sounds completely backwards. You would think, oh, it's for the public good, right? Well, if you have capital.
Well, somebody just told me a story yesterday or today that Henry Ford wanted to raise the pay of his workers. And the two Dodge brothers were on the board of directors. And they said, no, that's our money.
Oh, boy.
That's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, because Henry Ford was one of the smarter industrialists. He was. I'm not a fan of the guy, but he understood.
Sinister, right? It's more sinister.
He was a fan
very sinister. Yeah.
He was a fan of Hitler, but he did raise his workers' wages so they could afford to buy the cars they were making.
Yeah, I believe he wanted, I don't know if it's a direct quote, but I believe, if I remember reading correctly, that he wanted to keep the factories in Germany open for as long as possible so that he could let both sides burn each other out and grind each other down so that he could
got to give the house slaves a little more.
You know, I'm not saying he was a good guy at all. Yeah.
Hey, so just in the interest of time, how about we show the clip now?
I was about to say, should we introduce Howard Schultz?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Let me actually just 1 second. Let me make sure that I'm sharing this with the audio. Pardon me for.
Does this need any setup? Do people need to know what they're?
Why don't you set it up for us, Mark?
Okay, well, this is what I was just describing a minute ago. Howard, they had all these, what the corporate spies, the Buffalo SWAT team, come in to try to harass and cajole and talk these workers out of voting for the union. So it culminates in this meeting at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Buffalo, where they shut down all the Starbucks stores in Buffalo and called the baristas to this meeting where Howard's going to talk to them about Starbucks.
And before we tell us a little bit about this young lady too.
Well, this young lady, Gianna Reeve, and
she's incredible.
My friend Alec Baldwin had her on his podcast. He was so impressed with her. She's 19 years old at this point in the film, and she stands up to Howard Schultz in this meeting.
Yeah.
And that turns the whole thing around. That just exposes Howard Schultz for what he is and how he doesn't know what's going on. And it just, her passion just drives the union forward and makes it successful.
And courage. Her courage.
Yes.
She's an incredible young lady, really moving. All of these young people, like as you described earlier, Mark, in terms of how they empowered themselves through this process. For anyone who hasn't seen the film, please watch it because he captures it wonderfully. Anyway, here we go.
Moved on into personal anecdotes about how he grew up in the project, so he understands what we're going through.
I experienced at the age of 7 the imprinting, the shame, the vulnerability, the embarrassment of a family that was really destitute. My father had been working a series of really tough blue-collar jobs. He slipped on a sheet of ice making a delivery. And what happened was that the company he was working for fired him and dismissed him as a result of the accident.
I guess his dad didn't have a union because he got fired for his injury. And yet somehow all of these things were supposed to mean that we shouldn't unionize in Buffalo.
Now, I tell that story because it is deeply threaded into every aspect of the foundational values of Starbucks.
It was very bizarre that he was talking to a room full of low-income workers about how embarrassing and how hard it is to be poor and how glad he is that he's not poor anymore.
The shame, the vulnerability, the scars, hiding in the shadows of being poor.
Howard showed his disdain for poor people and, including his own baristas.
His speech had an air of a parent going, you should be grateful for what we've already given you. Don't we feed you? Don't we clothe you? What more could you ask for?
So listen to this. Starbucks became the first company in America to provide comprehensive health insurance for every single employee, including part-time people. Now, who forced us to do that? Who pushed us to do it? No one.
Actually, there was a representative that forced him to give health insurance, so.
No person, no organization, no pressure from anyone outside asked us, pressured us, maneuvered us, threatened us to do anything other than what we felt in our heart and our conscience we needed to do and should do.
The United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, did represent Starbucks workers 40 years ago, and Schultz decertified that union. But that union was successful in getting health insurance. It wasn't Howard that put health insurance in, it was the union.
There was another part of his speech that actually struck me as worse than, if that can be worse, where he compared us to Holocaust survivors at a concentration camp.
That when people in Germany and in Poland were sent to the concentration camps, they were thrown into rail cars, and sometimes the journey was 8 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours.
And I turned around to my manager who was behind me and I said, can I please go home? And she said, no, I don't think we can. I think we have to stay.
And one person for every 6 was given a blanket. And not everyone, but most people shared their blanket with 5 other people. And so much of that story is threaded into what we have tried to do at Starbucks.
Workers are trying to form a union, and he's talking about sharing his blanket.
What? That's, the most insane thing.
So in this scenario, I'm supposed to be a concentration camp prisoner? That's what he's chosen to compare his workers to?
I would.
So that's good there, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mark, Mori, should we keep playing it, or is that that's pretty much a captures
Well,
it, yeah?
if you want to see Gianna stand up to Howard Schultz, that's the next thing behind this.
I was talking to Casey Moore, and she had a copy of our fair election principles.
The fair election principles simply say you won't interfere or break the law with workers organizing.
She said, wouldn't it be crazy if someone handed this to Howard Schultz? And I said, yeah, wouldn't it? So I put the paper in my pocket, but my brain's just going ping, 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 back and forth, thinking of rebuttals to everything he's saying. There was no opening that they have offered for baristas to speak.
Gianna Reeve, she had messaged us and was like, I think I'm gonna stand up and ask Howard if he'll sign the fair election principles. And we're like, do it, we'll stand with you.
19-year-old Gianna Reeve faces the biggest moment of her young life, one that would become the turning point in the Starbucks organizing campaign.
I'm getting nervous at this point because I know I have that paper with me and I know that it could happen. I have to get the gumption to do it. After all of the possible belittling, condescending comments that could be made during this speech, he began to say thank you, end his speech, and go to walk to leave. I was going to try to talk to Howard Schultz. One of the corporate executives, Denise, grabbed me.
My name is Gianna Reeve. Thank you. I am an organizing member of Starbucks Workers United.
And before I could get another word out, he was gone.
And she was then surrounded by his SWAT team.
And Roxanne got in her face.
And they're attacking her like she just robbed a place.
You know how much this means to me, and you know how much I love my partners. And the strength we have is our strength with each other. How many of us right now? How many of us are wearing Workers United shirts right now? How many of us are wearing?
Immediately, members of management surrounded her. They were putting their hands on her.
This was the chance that I had to speak to this large group of baristas.
So Howard Schultz, please, if you care about your partners in Buffalo, please sign the fair election principles, please.
I was shocked that it happened. I was more shocked by the response.
Thank you, Gianna.
That's so awesome. I love watching that again.
Well, as I was mentioning, this is what impressed. I know Alec Baldwin's a contributing producer on this film, and when he saw that, he got her on his podcast.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
impressive young woman.
Never gets old watching that. I remember when the story first broke. When did this originally break? 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point?
This particular scene was in 2022.
Right. 4 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that video of that whole meeting, it's about 45 minutes or an hour, was on the Starbucks website. That's where I got it. And when I downloaded,
really?
Yeah, I downloaded it from the Starbucks website and say, okay, now I know I can build a film around this, right? So
wow, they didn't even realize.
It may even still be on their website. I know somebody published it the other day, and I think they must have got it off the website.
Including the end where Gianna jumps up. They didn't cut that out and they posted
Yeah,
that?
I mean, that's Starbucks property that I'm using under fair use.
Yeah.
They're shameless. I mean,
Too big to ignore.
how is it possible that anybody, most particularly Howard Schultz, could believe that speech was either well-intentioned or a good idea?
Well, think about it for a second. I mean, it's not unlike Trump. It's not unlike any politician or corporate leader. They're so out of touch. They're so delusional. They're so self-absorbed. You know, they live in another world, and they can't imagine anything outside their narrow little world.
The Epstein class does literally live in another world.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think what kind of emotion was he trying to evoke with that Holocaust story?
It's a self-aggrandizing story. See, he heard this story. A rabbi talked to him and told him this story, and it's like sharing a blanket. We're generous. We're, I don't know how you compare Starbucks to the Gestapo, but the Gestapo.
But he does.
And so he's saying, these people were so bad off. 5 of them had to share a blanket together, and that's the spirit we have, is we're sharing our blanket, which is bullshit, right?
It's also probably the way that, I mean, that is the billionaire's desire. Right? That 6 people would share a blanket.
Right, exactly. Leave everything else for them.
Yeah.
It's like they treat us like we're cattle.
Right.
What do we know about Howard Schultz? Like, I mean, what about this whole story that we've been sold on his ethical nature and the formation of Starbucks? I mean, is that all false?
Well, that's all PR. I mean, at one point in the film, one of the baristas says, well, I had heard that Howard Schultz founded Starbucks. I found out that wasn't true. And
is that not true?
That is not true.
Oh.
Starbucks was a pre-existing, I think they had something like 5 or 10 stores in Seattle when he bought it, with the blessing of Bill Gates' father, who apparently, according to Howard Schultz, wired the deal for him.
What a surprise.
What? Wait, what do you mean wired deal?
Well, here's the story. Howard Schultz himself tells the story. I'm just paraphrasing what I heard come out of Howard Schultz's mouth. And he says he got these investors together, and they were going to buy this little Starbucks local coffee chain. And one of his investors then decided he wanted it for himself. And I guess he told Howard Schultz, go away, I'm buying it. And he had a bigger bid on it. So somehow Howard Schultz went to a meeting across the street from where he was with Bill Gates' father, and I'm not even sure. I mean, apparently Bill Gates was very connected to the billionaire community in Seattle, and Howard Schultz told this story to Bill Gates, and Bill Gates' father, and Bill Gates' father says, "Don't worry about it; it's taken care of." I mean, it's like right out of The Godfather.
Do you know how Schultz and Gates were connected in the first place?
No, I didn't look into it. This is the story that Howard Schultz tells. So apparently, obviously, they had a close relationship if he went to them about this deal.
Was he wealthy?
That's fascinating. I'd never heard that before.
What was his original success if he was in a position to be able to buy Starbucks in the?
Well, he wasn't buying it himself. He was actually buying coffee making machines and selling them to stores. I think was kind of like the guy who started McDonald's. He was selling milkshake machines or something, and
well, again, that's the same story. You're talking about Ray Kroc.
Yeah.
Who stole McDonald's, but
Yeah.
he was the one who was selling the machines.
Right. Well, Howard Schultz was somehow, involved in, he was a salesman selling these coffee machines at the coffee stores or whatever it was, something like that. And he was in Italy. He went to Italy and he saw this whole coffee culture there. And this is his story of his inspiration for Starbucks.
Yeah, because the coffee culture in Italy revolves around the same store being on every corner, looking exactly the same, selling exactly the same thing. That's the coffee culture.
Right. Yeah, I think the Italians were insulted by that idea.
I bet they were.
There was another section of the film that I won't show, where Howard Schultz is testifying, I think, at Congress.
Yeah.
Right.
In the Senate. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there ever any fallout or consequence from that?
Not that I know of. What the senators were trying to do, Bernie Sanders and others, was to make this idea public, was to put it out in front of the public and try to embarrass Schultz. I mean, Schultz only came to that under threat of a subpoena. And then he retired as the president right after that. And
he was kind of embarrassed, I would say.
It accomplished that to a degree, yeah.
In terms of consequences, it's almost the opposite, because it was subsequent to that the Supreme Court ruled against the baristas. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the Supreme Court is just another branch of the power structure.
Of course.
Yeah, and so I think they voted unanimously in favor of Starbucks, and that had something to do with restricting the National Labor Relations Board, who was originally a victory won by workers in the 1930s, a government organization to protect workers' rights, and they've been chipping away at it ever since then. And Starbucks' case had something to do with a further chipping away of the power of the National Labor Relations Board.
Was it really 9-0?
That's what I believe. Yeah, I think so.
Nobody understands that this is the way the Supreme Court works. It's a little bit off topic, but there was a horrific case that was decided in June of 2022. And basically these 6 Malian young men sued Cargill and Nestle and all the rest of them, claiming that they'd been trafficked as child slaves from Mali to the Congo to work in chocolate plantations. Supreme Court, at the very earliest stage of the litigation, threw it out of court, and it was an 8-0 decision. Whenever economic interests are at stake, the Supreme Court is unified. It always happens.
Well, and the purpose of the Supreme Court is to create an illusion that there's some objective body separate from the corporate power structure. But that's just right. Part of the whole game they spin, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Do you know the
Native Americans from the reservation on the Supreme Court?
Do you know the Supreme Court does, they take 2 oaths of office. One is the standard one to the Constitution, la, 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 la. The other one is to protect poor people.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Is there a court you could bring them to for not doing it?
The Court of Moody.
The court of no, it's the court of public opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The Court of Public Opinion.
Which is also controlled by the billionaires.
Well, they attempt to control it through the mainstream media, but now all this alternative media, such as this podcast, has been growing up.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to be very careful that alternative media doesn't get too oversaturated with that viewpoint as well. That's what I'm worried about.
Oversaturated what viewpoint?
I don't want independent media to be falling to the same influences that control legacy outlets.
Well, if any independent media gets powerful enough and they start to veer from something that the ruling class thinks is important, they will come after them, either through. I mean, look what they did to Alec Jones. I'm not necessarily a big fan of his, but that's what they do. He's an alternative media.
Right. I mean, again, same thing. Not necessarily a huge fan of the people, but you have Candace Owens and Hassan Piker. I'm not going to speak to, whether I like them or not, but they got condemned very recently by Congress.
Right.
You're condemning people with the same thing as that what we're doing now, a podcast.
Well, and for speaking out about Zionism, that's their real crime, I think.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So, Mark, tell us where the film is in its journey at the moment, and tell us when it's going to win an Oscar.
Well, from your lips to the Academy's ears, but we just screened at a bunch of film festivals. The Washington D.C. International Film Festival. We had a very good reaction there, and two of the people that appear in the film did a Q&A afterwards. And we screened at the Ethos Film Festival in Santa Monica, California, and won the grand jury prize there. Very positive audience
Congratulations.
reaction. They clapped for 3 minutes through all of the credits. And then two of my films screened at the Atlanta Film Festival just last week. That was my first film, Building Bombs, which had started at the Atlanta Film Festival. That's where I launched my career. So it's like my bookends. And Baristas versus Billionaires was there. And we had a member of Starbucks Workers United answering the Q&A. And one of the most interesting things that happened was a young woman jumped up from the audience during the Q&A. And she says, "I'm a barista. I didn't know about all this. I'm going to go organize my store."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was great. So now we're working with Starbucks Workers United to do screenings. It's actually the film this Friday, May 8th, for 1 week, May 8th through 14th, screening 3 times a day at the Terra Theater in Atlanta. And that's, as you referred to, it's Academy Award qualifying run. So after this run there, we can submit it for Academy Award nomination.
That's exciting.
Very.
It's terrific. It's terrific.
Well, I think what makes the difference is if people come out and support it, and that's what makes independent media work, if people actually support it.
Yeah.
What can people do to support you in the film?
Well, they can go to baristasversusbillionaires.com. We have a newsletter that goes out regularly. I'm sure some of you guys have seen that. That reports on what the baristas are doing and on the film. And they can make a donation if they'd like. They can screen the film. The film is available to screen for local community groups, local church groups, local union groups. It's available to be purchased by university libraries and public libraries. All of that can be found on our website, baristasversusbillionaires.com. And of course, this is part of a movement. The whole purpose of this is to reinforce and help build up this movement. It's not just a movie just for entertainment. I mean, if you're somebody that wants to be active and do something about what's going on, you could bring a screening to your local community.
Is there any organization like Supra, the film, a movement, or that other ways that people can get involved in addition to the film?
Well, yeah, they can go to the website of Starbucks Workers United. And Starbucks, you know, it's 700 stores. They've got stores all over the country. They're constantly doing actions. They just had a big national strike, and they're now in a campaign for people to delete the app off of their phone. And so I would say, you know, there's a Starbucks in your just about every town, right? I mean, you can even go to your local Starbucks and say, "Hey, you guys unionized? Have you heard about the union?" And if they're already unionized, you can support them, and if they're not, you can encourage them. I'm
going to do that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go to my local Starbucks in Rockaway, and I'm going to ask them if they've been unionized, and I'm going to tell them to watch the film.
Well, you know, I did interview a couple of baristas at the store at Caesars. I think it's Caesars Point in Brooklyn.
Oh, Caesars Bay Bazaar?
Yeah. There's a Starbucks.
Yeah. Okay, that's not far from me. Yeah.
And that's a unionized store. And we had a couple of good interviews with baristas there. Ended up, we couldn't put every barista we interviewed in the film. It just would have been too many. But yeah, there's a real hardcore union leader there.
And like Chris Smalls, is he only focused on Amazon these days, or is he more of a representative of the unionization and workers' rights across the country?
I haven't talked to him lately.
As far as I'm aware, isn't he president of the ALU?
Well, I think he's no longer president, but now the ALU, as far as I know, affiliated itself with the Teamsters. I think they were just, you know, working on their own in one single location wasn't enough. You know, it's not like at Starbucks where it's just all over the country.
Mm.
Man, it would be great if we had the union power that they do in France or Italy.
Well, those workers fought hard for that.
Have they?
Well, yeah. I mean, France is the kind of country where they go on a revolution every 6 months.
Didn't Thomas Jefferson do that every few generations here? I think it's time.
Jefferson did say something like that.
Yeah, I think it's time.
Every 20 years.
Isn't that why we have the First Amendment and the right to bear arms, is so that we can actually overthrow the government when it becomes too tyrannical?
Yes.
Some words to that effect are in the Constitution, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, well,
I think that
in the Declaration of Independence.
Might be afraid
that moment's fast approaching, because with the cost of living and the collapse of the global economy, that's unfortunately coming.
It's time to indict these guys for treason and for their crimes, and hold people accountable. And if it means bearing arms, I say let's do it.
Tim wants me to sue everybody.
Well, if you're trying to hold them accountable in their courts, that's rather difficult because the whole court system itself is corrupted.
That's why I'm saying we need to operate outside. We have to just come together as people. I'm not promoting violence, because I'd rather it not come to that. But at some point, we have to take control of the factory, right? We have to literally seize it and say no mas, because that's the only language they seem to understand.
Right. That's true.
I mean,
they make the terms very difficult because they won't listen to anything.
What do you think, Mark, is there in your mind a critical mass of the number of Starbucks stores that it's going to take before it just floods into the entirety of them?
Well, I think the main thing that's going on now is reputational damage to Starbucks. And I think Starbucks is having some realization of that. Even though they close stores and fire union workers, more stores keep voting for the union. And now it's 700 stores. And I'm guessing the way Starbucks look at it, with 17,000 stores, if they sign a union contract with 700 stores, then in their mind, I think then they're over with, you know, because then the whole thing is going to become union, and they're going to, you know, but it needs to. I mean, Starbucks has built themselves on the backs of exploiting young people.
Yes.
That's their business model. Their business model is exploiting young people to sell sugar drinks to kids.
That's pretty, I mean, apart from the sugar drinks to kids, it could be, you know, digital candy to everybody, but that's the business model of all of them.
Yeah.
They don't sell anything healthy, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah.
I call for the re-examination of all of our motives. I know that's unrealistic, but that's where I'm at. Hey, so why don't we wrap it up here? And
well, wait, just before we wrap it up, tell us when people are going to be able to stream the movie, if at all.
Well, I don't know exactly when. We're talking to several distributors and business entities, and it needs to be able to, have these community screenings and these local theatrical screenings and libraries and so forth. So it's going to be streaming sometime, probably not before the fall, but if people want to see it, all they have to do is organize their community screening.
Right. All right, Mark, it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you on with us.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on, Mark.
Well, thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
I'm going to end the stream, but hang out for a minute, okay? Thank you all. Have a great week.